Turn the car around now, Anthony. Now! My voice came out so loud that my husband almost collided with another vehicle on the highway. My hands were trembling as I held that black bag my son had asked me to carry. Inside it, hidden among innocent clothes, was something that would change our family forever. For 15 years I helped my son financially. I sacrificed my savings, I lent him money that never came back. But I never imagined he would be capable of this. But before we continue, make sure you're already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments. Where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are reaching. My name is Margaret. I'm 67 years old, and I always believed that my greatest purpose in life was to help my family. My husband Anthony and I worked our whole lives to save for a comfortable retirement. Our only son, Philip, who is 42, had lost his job 6 years ago, and since then, we lived in an endless cycle of loans that, deep down, I knew would never be repaid. It all started with small requests. Mom, can you help me with the rent this month? I promise I'll pay you back when I get paid. Soon came the water and electric bills, my grandson Peter's school supplies, the payments for the new car they had no business buying. Before I knew it, I was supporting his entire family. Philip's wife, Renee, always treated me with a cold politeness. She never showed genuine gratitude for the sacrifices we made. I saw the way she would roll her eyes when I mentioned that we needed to be more careful with money, as if it were my obligation to keep funding their lifestyle. 2 months ago, when they asked me for $25,000 to enroll Peter in a private school because he was being bullied at his public school, I finally drew a line. I can't do it anymore, son. Our retirement money is running out. We'll find another public school, talk to the principal about the bullying. The look Philip gave me in that moment was as if I had betrayed him, as if saying no after years of saying yes was an unforgivable crime. In the following weeks, their treatment of me changed drastically. They no longer let me see Peter on the weekends. When I called, they always had excuses. He's sleeping, we're just leaving now, he has a lot of homework. Each refusal was like a stab to my heart. Then, 3 days ago, the surprise came. Philip called, sounding more cheerful than he had in months. Mom, we're thinking of taking a trip to Lake Tahoe this weekend. A friend lent us his cabin. We think it would be great for all of us to go, so Peter can spend some time with his grandparents. What do you think? My heart leaped with joy. Finally, a chance to see my grandson, to fix things. Of course, son, we'd love to go. Great. Oh, and Mom, could you carry an extra bag for us? Our car is already full with Peter's things. No problem, I answered without hesitation. On the morning of the trip, Philip and Renee showed up with an ordinary black bag. Nothing suspicious about it. We put it in our car and agreed that they would follow right behind us on Interstate 80 towards Lake Tahoe. We had been on the road for almost 2 hours when my cell phone rang. It was Philip. Mom, that bag we gave you, you didn't open it, did you? The question sent an instant chill down my spine. There was something strange in his tone. No, why would I open it? No reason. It's just, I love you, Mom. You know that, right? In 40 years, my son had said those words to me maybe half a dozen times. And never like that, in that way, like a farewell. Philip, what's going on? Nothing, Mom. Just keep driving. We'll see you at the toll booth. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Something was terribly wrong. Anthony, pull over. What? We're on the highway, Margaret. Pull over now, I screamed. My husband veered onto the shoulder. Philip and Renee drove past us, honking their horn. I asked Anthony to turn on the hazard lights as if we had car trouble. With my heart pounding, I opened the black bag. I pushed aside some t-shirts, a pair of children's pajamas, a Spider-Man pencil case that I recognized as a gift I had given Peter on his birthday. And then, at the bottom, I found packages wrapped in black plastic. My blood ran cold. Even at my age, I knew exactly what that was. They were illegal substances, a lot of them. Oh my God, Anthony, I whispered, showing my husband. They were using us as mules. Philip and Renee had planned to use their own parents as couriers for illegal substances, knowing that an elderly couple would probably not be searched as thoroughly at police checkpoints on the highway. The destination was never a cabin in Lake Tahoe. We were going somewhere to deliver the goods. Turn the car around now, Anthony! Now! I screamed, feeling a mix of panic and rage I had never experienced before. My husband looked at me with wide eyes, but he didn't question me. He made a U-turn at the first opportunity. As I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw Philip's car stop and start to turn around as well. "What are we going to do?" Anthony asked, his voice trembling as much as his hands on the steering wheel. "Call the police," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. "Our own son was willing to send us to jail, Anthony. We have no choice." The moment Anthony dialed 911, I felt as if I were betraying my own blood. But what choice did we have? If we were caught with that amount, we would spend our last years in a prison cell. "Emergency? What is your situation?" a female voice answered. Anthony looked at me, his face as white as a sheet. "I need to report an incident. Our son put illegal substances in our bag without our knowledge. We're on Interstate 80, at mile marker 107, heading towards Chicago." As my husband spoke, I saw Philip's car approaching at high speed in the rearview mirror. My heart raced. "Anthony, they're coming up behind us." "Ma'am, you need to remain calm," said the voice on the other end of the line. "A patrol car is already being dispatched to your location. Do not confront the suspects. Continue driving normally if you can." Philip's car pulled up alongside ours, and he gesticulated frantically for us to stop. Renee was in the passenger seat, her face contorted into an expression I had never seen before. Fear mixed with rage. "Keep driving," I whispered to Anthony. "Don't stop." My husband accelerated, but our old car was no match for Philip's newer vehicle. He got ahead of us and slammed on the brakes, forcing Anthony to stop to avoid a collision. "My God, what do we do now?" Anthony seemed desperate, still holding the phone. "Lock the doors," the police dispatcher instructed. "Do not exit the vehicle." Philip got out of his car and came running to our window. His face was red, his eyes wild. He banged on the glass with his fist. "Mom, what are you doing? Why did you turn around?" I squeezed Anthony's hand, looking for strength. "Don't open it," I pleaded. Philip continued to pound on the window. "Mom, open this door. What happened?" I looked into the eyes of my only child, the boy I had cradled on feverish nights, who had cried in my lap when he was rejected for the first time, who gave me my only grandson. Now, at 42 years old, he was willing to sacrifice his own parents to solve his financial problems. "We know what's in the bag, Philip," I said, loud enough for him to hear me through the glass. "We called the police." His face transformed. The rage gave way to shock, then to panic. "You did what? Are you crazy? This is going to destroy our lives." "You were going to destroy ours, son," I replied, tears streaming down my face. "Why did you do this?" "We owe money to dangerous people, Mom. It was the only way out. They were going to hurt Peter." Renee appeared at his side, grabbing his arm. "Let's go, Philip, now." Philip gave me one last look, a mixture of fear and betrayal in his eyes. "You've ruined everything, Mom." They ran back to their car and sped off, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. "They're fleeing," Anthony reported to the police. "Patrol cars are already on the way. What is the vehicle's description and license plate?" We provided the information, feeling as though every word was a stab at our own son. 15 minutes later, which felt like an eternity, 2 police cars pulled up beside us. We showed them the bag, told them the whole story. I cried uncontrollably as I explained how we had supported our son and his family for years, how we had recently set boundaries, how he had planned this reconciliation only to use us as drug mules. "Ma'am, what you did today was very brave," said an older police officer, his gaze sympathetic. "Unfortunately, we see many cases where criminals use the elderly and family members as mules, precisely because they are rarely stopped at checkpoints. You probably saved your own lives today." I sat on the shoulder of the road, holding Anthony's hand as they took the bag and recorded our statement. A female officer approached with a cup of water. "And my grandson?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Peter is only 10 years old. He was in the car with them. We are searching for the vehicle now. If the child is with them when they are located, Child Protective Services will be activated to ensure his safety." Sitting there, in the middle of nowhere, between the open sky and the hot asphalt, I thought about all the times I had given in to Philip's requests, all the times I gave up my own needs to satisfy his, all the times I ignored the signs that something was wrong, because I wanted to believe that my son was still the person I raised him to be. "We're going to take you back home," the officer said. "We need you to be available in case we have more questions." On the way back, I sat in complete silence, looking out the window at the landscapes that had seemed so promising just hours before. Anthony held my hand, his thumb making small circles on my skin, just as he always did when I was distressed. "Did I do the right thing?" I finally asked, my voice breaking. "What if they hurt Peter? What if—" "Margaret," Anthony interrupted me, his voice firm despite his teary eyes. "They put drugs in our bag. They were willing to let us be imprisoned. That's not love, that's not family. You did the only thing you could do." But that night, alone in the bed I had shared with Anthony for 45 years, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining where Peter might be, if he was scared, if he would understand why his grandmother had betrayed his parents. The phone rang at 3:17 in the morning. I answered before the second ring. "Mrs. Margaret?" It was the police officer's voice. "We found your son and his wife trying to cross the state line. They are in custody." "And my grandson?" I asked, my heart nearly pounding out of my chest. "The boy is fine. He's with a social worker now. As the closest relatives, you have priority for temporary custody, if you wish." I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Anthony and I sat on the small back porch, watching the stars disappear as the day dawned. We didn't need to talk much. After 45 years together, our silences said more than words. "We're going to get Peter," I finally said, as the sun began to color the horizon. "Are you sure, Margaret? Are we old enough to take care of a 10-year-old boy?" I looked at my husband, at his calloused hands from a lifetime of work, at the eyes that now showed the weight of an unthinkable betrayal. "What choice do we have? He's our grandson. I can't let him go to a foster home or to a strange family, not after all this." Anthony nodded slowly. "You've always had a heart bigger than the world." At 8 in the morning, we were at the Child Protective Services office. The counselor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, received us in her small, stuffy office. "Peter is physically fine, but he's very scared and confused," she explained. "He doesn't understand why his parents were taken away by the police or why he can't go home." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "Just that there was a problem, and we needed to find a safe place for him to stay for now. We think it's best that you explain it to him in the way you see fit." When Peter entered the room, my heart sank. He looked so small, so vulnerable in his wrinkled Batman t-shirt and messy hair. His eyes, so much like his father's, were red and swollen. "Grandma?" His voice was just a whisper. "Where are my mom and dad?" I opened my arms and he ran to me, burying his face in my chest as he used to do when he was younger. I felt his tears soaking my blouse. "We're going home, my love," I said softly, stroking his hair. "We'll go home and we can talk there, okay?" On the way to our house, Peter sat quietly in the back seat, clutching the school backpack that the social worker had picked up from his house. Occasionally, our eyes would meet in the rearview mirror, and I would try to give him a comforting smile. At home, I made hot chocolate. It was always our family's comfort drink, and the three of us sat at the kitchen table. "Peter," I began, choosing my words carefully, "your parents did something wrong, something against the law, and because of that, they're going to need to be away for a while." His eyes widened. "Are they criminals?" The innocent and direct question hit me like a punch. How do you explain to a child that his parents aren't monsters, but desperate people who made terrible decisions? "No, my love. They are people who made a mistake. Good people sometimes do bad things when they're scared or desperate." "It was about money, wasn't it?" Peter asked, surprising me with his perception. "They fought a lot about money. My mom always said that if you helped more, we wouldn't be in this situation." I felt as if I had been slapped. Was this how Renee portrayed me to her own son? As a stingy grandmother who refused to help enough? "Peter, Grandma and Grandpa helped your parents for many years," Anthony explained, his voice gentle but firm. "We gave them a lot of money, more than we could afford, in fact. But sometimes, no matter how much you give, it's never enough if the person doesn't know how to manage it." Peter stirred his spoon in the hot chocolate, creating little whirlpools. "I know. I used to hear them arguing sometimes. Dad would say it was just one more loan, and Mom would say you owed it to them because he was your only son." Every word from Peter was a painful revelation of how we were seen by my son's family. Not as generous people who sacrificed their own financial security, but as a bank that never closed, a source of resources to be exploited. "Peter, do you know how long you're going to have to stay here?" he asked, changing the subject. The lady from Child Protective Services said it could be a long time, that it will depend on the judge. He looked up, suddenly alarmed. Are you going to send me away too? Never, I answered firmly, reaching out to hold his hand. This is your home now, for as long as you need. In the following days, we established a new routine. We enrolled Peter in the public school near our house, the same one where Anthony had been a janitor before he retired. We bought new school supplies, some clothes, and tried to create an atmosphere of normalcy in the midst of the chaos our lives had become. A week after Philip and Renee's arrest, we received a visit from a lawyer. They want to see you, he said, sitting in our living room. They are being held in preventive detention while the case goes to trial. And what do they have to say? Anthony asked, his voice harder than I had ever heard it. They claim they were forced by drug traffickers, that they were being threatened and saw no alternative. They're asking you to pay for their defense. I let out a bitter laugh that I didn't recognize as my own. After everything they did, after trying to turn us into criminals, they still think they can ask us for money? The lawyer looked uncomfortable. They also mentioned that, if you don't help, they might claim that you knew about the drugs, that it was a joint plan. Anthony stood up so quickly that the chair almost fell over. Get out of our house now, he ordered, pointing to the door, and tell my son that if he dares to accuse us, I will personally testify against him. Tell him we have the recordings of the calls to the police, that we have witnesses that we discovered the drugs and immediately asked for help. Tell him we are not the idiots he thought we were. After the lawyer left, Anthony sat down heavily on the sofa, covering his face with his hands. It was one of the few times I had seen him cry in all our years together. Anthony, I whispered, sitting beside him, do you think we did something wrong in raising him? How did our son become this person? He shook his head slowly. I don't know, Margaret. Maybe we gave too much. Maybe he never learned that actions have consequences because we were always there to fix everything. That night, while Peter slept in the room that had once been his father's, Anthony and I made a pact. We would not allow our grandson to grow up with the same sense of entitlement that had corrupted Philip. We would teach him responsibility, hard work, and above all, integrity. The next morning, I received a call from the prison. It was Philip. Hello? My voice came out hesitant, uncertain. Mom. Philip's voice sounded different over the prison phone, harder, colder. I remained silent, not knowing what to say to the son who had tried to use me as a drug mule. You destroyed our lives, he continued when he realized I wasn't going to speak. Do you know what happens to people like me in prison? Do you know how long I could be in here? I felt my knees weaken, and I sat down in the nearest chair. It was surreal to hear my son, the child I raised, accusing me of suffering the consequences of his own actions. Philip, I finally managed to say, you put illegal substances in our bag without our knowledge. You and Renee planned to use your own parents as drug couriers, and now you blame me for calling the police? It was our only chance, Mom. We owe money to dangerous people. They were going to hurt Peter after you refused to pay for his school. Don't you dare, I interrupted, my voice trembling with rage. Don't you dare use your son as an excuse. We helped you for 6 years. 6 years. We gave you money we didn't even have to support a lifestyle you couldn't afford. And when we finally said no to a ridiculously expensive private school, you decided to turn us into criminals? There was silence on the other end of the line. How's Peter? He finally asked, his voice suddenly smaller. He's with us. He's safe. He's in school. And for the first time in a long time, he's in a home where he doesn't have to listen to constant arguments about money. I want to talk to him. That's not up to me anymore, Philip. There's a legal process now. The judge will determine when and how you can have contact. I heard a heavy sigh. Mom, please, you need to help us. You need to pay for a good lawyer, for the family, for Peter. No, I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. It's over, Philip. The money is gone. The trust is gone. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You're going to regret this, he said, and I could hear the rage growing again. When I get out of here. If you're threatening your own parents now, Philip, I suggest you think carefully, I interrupted. Any threat will be reported immediately to the authorities. I am going to take care of Peter and give him the stability he deserves. That is my only responsibility now. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Anthony, who had heard everything from the kitchen doorway, came over and hugged me in silence. We stood there like that, Two elderly people supporting each other, trying to process how our only son had turned into a threatening stranger. The weeks turned into months. Life with Peter brought a new and surprisingly comforting routine. He went to school in the morning. I would pack his lunch and help him with his homework. In the afternoons, Anthony would take him to play soccer in the neighborhood field or to ride his bike. At night, we would sit down to dinner together, something that rarely happened at his house, as we discovered. Peter told us that he usually ate alone watching television while his parents argued in another room. "Grandma," Peter asked me one night, as I was tucking him in, "why did my parents fight so much about money if you were helping them?" The question took me by surprise. Peter was much more perceptive than we had imagined. "Well, sweetie, sometimes people want more than they can have. Your parents wanted a big house, new cars, trips, an expensive school for you, but they didn't have enough money for all of that. Grandpa and I helped a lot, but it still wasn't enough for the lifestyle they wanted." Peter looked thoughtful. "At their house, my mom always said it was your fault for not helping more, that if you really loved us, you would give more money." Each revelation from Peter was like a small stab. It was painful to discover how Philip and Renee had portrayed me to their own son, as a stingy villain, not as the grandmother who had sacrificed her own financial security for them. "Peter, love is much more than giving money. It's being present. It's teaching what's right. It's setting limits when necessary. Sometimes, saying no is the hardest way to love someone." He nodded slowly. "Like when you don't let me eat chocolate before dinner because you're worried about my health." I smiled. Exactly like that. As the months went by, Peter blossomed. His grades improved. He made friends in the neighborhood. And slowly, the questions about when his parents would come back became less frequent. Not for lack of love, I realized, but because he was finally experiencing the stability that every child deserves. Philip and Renee's trial was scheduled for 6 months after the arrest. As the main witnesses, Anthony and I would be called to testify. The thought of testifying against my own son made me physically ill, but I knew it was necessary, not just for justice, but to show Peter that even painful decisions are necessary when it comes to doing what's right. A week before the trial, I received a letter from Renee. It surprised me. She had never written to me before. With some apprehension, I opened the envelope. "Dear mother-in-law, I hope this letter finds you well. I know you probably hate me now, and you have every right. What we did was unforgivable. Using you and Anthony like that. I have no excuses. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I've been thinking about all the times you helped us and how I always wanted more. How I spoke ill of you to Peter. How I manipulated Philip into asking for more and more. The truth is, I never learned to live within our means. I always believed I deserved more than what I had. And when you and Anthony were there, ready to cover our debts, it was easy to keep going like that. I'm not asking for forgiveness or money for lawyers. I just wanted you to know that, despite everything, I am grateful that you are taking care of my son. He deserves better than the parents he has. Renee." I reread the letter several times, trying to find manipulation between the lines, but for the first time since I met Renee, her words seemed sincere. I showed the letter to Anthony, who read it in silence. "What do you think?" I asked. He sighed deeply. "I think prison can change people. Some for the worse, others, maybe for the better. Do you believe her?" "I don't know, Margaret, but I think it's the closest thing to an apology we're going to get." On the day of the trial, I wore my best dress, not out of vanity, but out of respect for the solemnity of the moment. Peter stayed with a neighbor. We decided he didn't need to go through the trauma of seeing his parents in court. The courtroom was surprisingly full. Apparently, the case of elderly parents being used as mules by their own children had attracted the attention of the local media. I sat next to Anthony in the front row, my fingers intertwined with his, seeking strength. When Philip and Renee entered, handcuffed and wearing prison uniforms, my heart sank. Philip looked like he had aged 10 years in 6 months. He was thinner, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and a beard he had never had before. Our eyes met for a second before he looked away, unable to face me. Renee, on the other hand, looked directly at me and nodded slightly, as if acknowledging my presence. There was something different about her, a humility that had never existed before. The trial began with the charges being read: drug trafficking, attempt to use third parties without consent for the transport of illegal substances, conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Every word was like a stab. When I was called to testify, my legs were shaking so much that I had to lean on the railing to get to the witness stand. The prosecutor asked me questions about the years of financial support, about the recent refusal of the tuition money, about the strange reconciliation and the invitation for the trip. "Mrs. Margaret," the prosecutor asked, "when exactly did you realize that something was wrong?" I swallowed hard, glancing briefly at my son before answering. "It was when Philip called during the trip to ask about the bag. He had never, in his entire adult life, ended a call by saying he loved me. That wasn't normal. I felt that something was terribly wrong." "And what did you do then?" My voice failed. I asked my husband to pull over the car. I opened the bag and found the packages hidden among my grandson's clothes. Packages of drugs. "And what was your reaction upon discovering this?" My voice failed again. I told my husband to call the police. I knew I was reporting my own son, but they were willing to let us go to prison in their place. What choice did I have? The defense attorney, a young man in a cheap suit, stood up for the cross-examination. "Mrs. Margaret, you claim that you supported your son and his family for years. Are you aware that, by doing so, you may have created a financial dependency that led them to take desperate measures when you suddenly cut off that support?" I felt the blood rush to my face. I did not suddenly cut off the support. I said no to a specific request, an expensive private school, after 6 years of paying practically all their expenses. And even if I had cut everything off at once, does that justify turning your own parents into unwitting drug traffickers? The lawyer recoiled slightly at my indignation. "I'm not suggesting a justification, ma'am. I'm just establishing the context of the situation." "The context," I replied, my voice firmer now, "is that two 40-year-old adults decided that the solution to their financial problems was to sacrifice their elderly parents." After my testimony, it was Anthony's turn. He told his version with the same dignified calm he always showed in times of crisis. When he finished, the judge called Philip and Renee to testify. Philip took the witness stand first. He couldn't look at me as he spoke. "We were desperate," he began. "We owed money to dangerous people who threatened to hurt our son. When my mother refused to pay for the private school, we realized that she had finally drawn a line, that we could no longer count on her financially." "And did that justify putting drugs in her bag without her knowledge?" the prosecutor asked. Philip finally looked at me, his eyes full of tears. "No, nothing justifies what we did. I betrayed the people who were always by my side. I deserve to be arrested just for that." The sincerity in his voice surprised me. It didn't seem rehearsed or manipulative. Renee testified next. She confirmed everything Philip had said, but went further. "It was my idea," she admitted, leaving the court in silence. Philip hesitated, but I insisted. I said his parents were already old, that no one would suspect them, that it was our only way out. I manipulated my husband in the same way I manipulated my in-laws for years. The trial lasted 3 days. On the last day, after the closing arguments, the judge announced his decision. "Philip and Renee Miller, this court finds you guilty of all charges. However, considering the lack of prior criminal records, the spontaneous confession, and the apparent remorse, I sentence you both to 4 years in prison, with the possibility of advancing to a work release program after serving 1/3 of the sentence." 4 years. My son would spend 4 years in prison for something he himself had chosen to do. Peter would grow up during those years without his parents. And I, a 67-year-old grandmother, would be responsible for raising a preteen. After the trial, Philip's lawyer asked if we would like to speak with him briefly before he was taken back to prison. I looked at Anthony, who nodded slightly. In a small room next to the courtroom, we found Philip, still in handcuffs, but without the guards present inside the room. "Mom," he began as soon as we entered, his voice choked with emotion. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What we did is inexcusable." "Why, Philip?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. "Why would you do something like that to us, after everything we did for you?" He hung his head. "Because for years you were always there to clean up my messes. Whenever I made a mistake, you fixed it, I think. I never really grew up. I never learned to deal with the consequences of my own mistakes. "And now?" Anthony asked, his voice calm but firm. "Now?" Philip took a deep breath. "Now I want you to take care of Peter better than I ever did. I don't want him to grow up like me, believing the world owes him something. His custody will still be decided by the judge," Anthony said. "I know, and I'm going to recommend that he stay with you. Peter needs stability, better examples than Renee and I were." Those words, coming from my son, took me completely by surprise. For the first time since the beginning of that hell, I saw a glimpse of the boy I had raised, a glimpse of integrity and responsibility. "I'm going to try to be a better person when I get out of here," he continued. "Someone that you and Peter can respect again." When the guard came to get Philip, I did something I hadn't planned. I hugged my son. It was a quick hug, still laden with pain and distrust, but also with a small hope that, maybe, something good could come out of all this mess. On the way back home, Anthony and I remained silent for a long time. "Do you think he's really changed?" I finally asked. Anthony considered for a moment. "I don't know. Prison changes people, but not always for the better. I think only time will tell." "And us? What happens now?" He took my hand from across the car seat. "Now we raise our grandson. We give him what he needs, not necessarily what he wants. We teach values, responsibility, integrity, and we pray we do a better job this time." When we got home, Peter ran to greet us, anxious for news. "What happened? When are Mom and Dad coming back?" We sat down with him in the living room and explained, as gently as possible, that his parents would be away for a few years, that he would live with us during that time. "Are they really going to prison?" he asked, his voice small. "Yes, sweetie. They did something wrong, and now they need to face the consequences." Peter was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Can I visit them?" "That will depend on the family court judge, but probably yes, with some limits." He nodded, surprisingly composed for a boy his age. "Okay, I understand." That night, as I was making Peter's bed, he asked me a question that would stay with me for a long time. "Grandma, do you still love Dad even after what he did?" Peter's question caught me off guard. How do you explain the complexity of a mother's love to a 10-year-old boy? How do you say that it's possible to love a person deeply and at the same time be devastated by their choices? "Peter," I began, sitting on the edge of the bed, "a mother's love is complicated. I love your father, yes, I will love him forever, because he is my son. But that doesn't mean I accept or approve of what he did. Loving someone isn't giving them a free pass to do bad things." Peter thought for a moment, clutching his worn teddy bear. "Like when you love me, but you ground me if I do something wrong?" I smiled at the perfect simplicity of his analogy. "Exactly like that, sweetie. I love you too much to let you grow up believing you can do anything without consequences. And will you love me even if I do something really, really bad one day, like Dad did?" I felt my heart ache with the fear in his voice. "Always, Peter, always. Nothing in the world could change that." He nodded, seeming satisfied. "Then I guess it's okay that Dad is in prison, as long as you still love him." The following weeks were dedicated to establishing a new normal. The social worker visited regularly to check on how Peter was adjusting. The family court judge determined that for now, Anthony and I would have provisional custody, with the first visit to his parents scheduled for 2 months after the start of their sentence. On the day of the visit, Peter was nervous, changing his clothes 3 times before settling on a superhero t-shirt that Philip had given him for his last birthday. "Do you think they'll be happy to see me?" he asked, as I combed his unruly hair. "It will be the best moment they've had in months," I answered honestly. The correctional facility was a cold and intimidating place, even for a visit. Peter squeezed my hand tightly as we passed through the metal detectors and security procedures. The visiting room had concrete tables bolted to the floor and hard plastic chairs. Philip came in first. He was wearing the orange prison uniform and looked even thinner than at the trial. His eyes lit up when he saw Peter, and for a moment I could see the boy he had once been before life and bad choices transformed him. "Peter." He knelt and opened his arms. Peter hesitated for only a second before running to his father, wrapping him in a tight hug. I felt tears in my eyes watching the reunion. No matter how many mistakes Philip had made, he was and always would be Peter's father. Renee came in right after. She was different. Her hair, once carefully dyed and styled, now showed gray roots. Her face, without the makeup I had never seen her without, looked older and more tired. But when she saw Peter, her smile was genuine. I sat at a nearby table, giving them some privacy while Peter excitedly talked about his new school, the friends he had made, the dog Anthony was considering adopting for him. "Grandma helps me with my homework every day," I heard Peter say, "and Grandpa is teaching me how to play chess. They said when I'm good enough, we're going to a tournament." Philip looked at me over Peter's head, his eyes communicating a silent gratitude that words couldn't express. After almost an hour, a guard announced that the visit was ending. Philip hugged Peter for a long time. "Be good for your grandparents," he said. "Listen to what they say. They're wiser than I ever was." "When are you coming home, Dad?" Peter asked, the question I knew he had been holding in. Philip looked at me again before answering. "It's going to take a while, son, but when I come back, I'm going to be a better father. I promise." While Peter said goodbye to Renee, Philip approached me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but please, don't let him forget me. Don't let him think I don't care." "I would never do that, Philip. He will always know that you love him." Philip nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you. For everything. For taking care of him, for not letting him go to a foster home or an adoptive family." "He's my grandson," I replied simply. "And you, with all your mistakes, are still my son." On the way home, Peter was unusually quiet. "Are you okay, sweetie?" I asked, watching him in the rearview mirror. "They seemed different," he finally said. "Different how?" "Smaller. Dad always seemed so big. And Mom was always dressed up, with makeup and her nails done. Now they just look like normal people." I understood what he meant. To a child, parents are almost mythological figures, larger than life, infallible. Seeing Philip and Renee in prison, vulnerable and diminished, must have been a shock to Peter's view of them. "They're learning some hard lessons," I explained. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to realize what really matters." "Like what?" "Like family, like being honest, like taking responsibility for our mistakes instead of trying to make other people pay for them." Peter was silent for the rest of the way, lost in thoughts I could only imagine. The months turned into a year. The bi-monthly visits to the prison became part of our routine. Peter adapted surprisingly well to his new life. His grades were excellent. He had friends, played soccer on Saturdays on a local team that Anthony started coaching voluntarily. The social worker who visited us regularly commented on how much happier and more secure Peter seemed than when she first met him. "You're doing an incredible job," she said during one of her visits. "It's not common to see children adapt so well after a trauma like this." "He's strong," I replied, "stronger than I was at his age." Philip and Renee, meanwhile, seemed to be changing in prison. Philip got a job in the prison library and began studying to finish his college degree through a distance education program. Renee got involved in a crafts program and even started teaching sewing classes to other inmates. During visits, they always asked about Peter's school, his activities, his development. They seemed genuinely interested in his life, not just concerned about when they could get their own back. On one of the visits, about a year and a half after the arrest, Philip asked to speak with me alone for a few minutes. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot," he began, his tone more serious than usual. "When I get out of here, I don't want you and Dad to support us again." I raised my eyebrows, surprised by the statement. "I want to do things the right way this time," he continued. "I'm studying. I got a certification in accounting. I'm going to get a job, live within our means. No cars we can't afford, no expensive private schools." "That's good to hear, son. And I want you to promise me one thing," he said, leaning forward. "If I go back to my old habits, if I start asking for money or trying to manipulate you, say no immediately. It doesn't matter what excuse I give you." The sincerity in his eyes moved me. It was the first real sign that Philip was genuinely committed to changing. "I promise," I replied, "but I hope I won't need to keep that promise." He smiled, a sad but honest smile. "Me too, Mom, me too." That night, I told Anthony about the conversation while we were washing the dinner dishes. Peter was already in bed, exhausted after a day at the water park. "Do you believe him?" Anthony asked, drying a plate. "I want to believe him," I answered honestly. "But I know that real change takes time, and that good intentions in prison are different from facing temptations in the real world." Anthony nodded. "You know what worries me more? What it will be like for Peter when they get out. He's so well adjusted here with us. The transition is going to be difficult. It was a concern I had too. Peter, now almost 12, was thriving under our care. The thought of disrupting that stability distressed me. Let's take it one day at a time, I said, repeating the mantra that had sustained us during that turbulent period. One day at a time. Peter's 12th birthday arrived on a sunny Saturday in September. We prepared a small party in the backyard. Nothing extravagant, just a few friends from school, a homemade cake that he helped me make himself, and a table of simple treats. The difference from the elaborate parties Philip and Renee used to throw was noticeable. "Are you sure you don't need help with the party costs?" the social worker had asked during her monthly visit, clearly concerned about our limited retirement budget. "We're fine," Anthony replied with a smile. "We've discovered that children need more attention than expensive parties." It was true. Peter, who used to have themed parties in rented halls, with expensive gifts and professional decorations, seemed happier with our simple homemade celebration than I ever saw him at previous parties. Maybe because now he actually participated in everything, from choosing the cake flavor to helping inflate the balloons. "This is the best birthday I've ever had, Grandma," he told me as we hung up streamers together. "Even without the bounce house and the cotton candy machine?" I asked, half joking, half serious. "Yeah," he shrugged. "That was fun, but I barely saw my parents during the parties. They were always busy greeting guests or arguing about something that wasn't how my mom wanted it." The wisdom of that child sometimes surprised me. At only 12 years old, Peter had already learned lessons about values and priorities that his parents took decades to begin to understand, and even then, they needed prison for it. Peter's big gift was a new bicycle. Not the latest model, but a good quality one that Anthony had restored from a used bike we found at a thrift store. Together, they had sanded, painted, and repaired that bike for weeks, turning the project into a grandfather-grandson activity that created more memories than any store-bought gift could. In the middle of the party, while the kids were playing soccer in the backyard, my cell phone rang. It was the prison's number. Philip had received special permission to call on his son's birthday. "Mom, is Peter nearby?" "Yes, Philip. Do you want to talk to him?" "Please." I called Peter, who came running, his face red from the exertion and smiling from ear to ear. "It's your dad," I said, handing him the phone. Peter chatted excitedly for a few minutes, describing the party, the friends, the bike that Grandpa had fixed up for him. "Yeah, Dad, I'm really liking it," he said in response to something Philip asked. "Grandma and Grandpa said we might go fishing next holiday at their neighbor's ranch." When the call ended, Peter handed the phone back to me. "Dad wants to talk to you again." "Thank you, Mom," Philip said when I took the phone, for giving him a normal happy birthday. "It's not the party that Renee and I would have thrown, but it's exactly what he needs, Philip. Simple things, done with love." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you're doing. Keep studying, keep getting better. That's the best thanks you can give us." "Mom, there's something else. I submitted an application for the work release program. The lawyers think I have a good chance, with my good behavior and the courses I've taken here." I felt a knot in my chest. A work release program meant that Philip would be out of prison during the day, returning only to sleep. It was the first step toward his full release, which was scheduled for just over a year from now, with reductions for good behavior. "That's good, son," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know it's complicated," he continued, clearly sensing my hesitation. "Peter is well established with you now. I don't want to mess that up, but I want to start being a part of his life again, little by little." "Of course," I replied automatically, while my mind spun with the implications. We'll talk about it at the next visit." After I hung up, Anthony noticed my worried expression. "What happened, Margaret?" I told him about Philip's application for the work release program. Anthony was silent for a moment, thoughtful. "It was to be expected," he finally said. "We couldn't keep him away forever. He's the boy's father, after all." "I know, it's just, Peter is doing so well, so balanced. I'm afraid everything will be destabilized when Philip starts coming back into his life." Anthony took my hand. "We can't control that, dear. We can only do our best and be there for Peter, no matter what happens." 2 weeks later, we received the news. Philip's application had been approved. Starting next month, he would be on a work release program, working during the day at a co-op that employed former inmates and returning to the prison only to sleep. We sat down with Peter to explain what that meant. Your dad will be able to see you more often now, Anthony explained. You can spend a few hours together on weekends, maybe even go out for ice cream or to the park. Peter's eyes lit up. Will he be able to watch my soccer games? Probably, if it's during his allowed hours. And my mom? Your mother is still in close custody, I explained. You'll still visit her every 2 weeks, as always. Peter nodded, absorbing the information. And where will I live? Still with you, right? The worry in his voice was evident. After almost 2 years living with us, our house had become his safe harbor. Yes, sweetie, I assured him. You're still living here for now. When your father is fully released, then the judge will decide on the new arrangements. But that's still a little while away. What if I want to keep living here even after that? The question hung in the air, heavy with its implications. Anthony and I exchanged glances. That's something we'll have to discuss with your father when the time comes, Anthony said carefully. But remember that your father loves you very much and also wants what's best for you. Peter's first meeting with Philip outside of prison occurred on a Saturday. Philip, still wearing an ankle monitor, looked uncomfortable in his civilian clothes, as if he had forgotten how to dress like a normal person. We agreed to meet at a park near our house. I stayed at a distance, giving them privacy but keeping them in my sight. I saw Philip hug Peter for a long time. I saw them talking as they walked through the park. I saw Philip applaud enthusiastically when Peter showed off some moves with the soccer ball. It seemed so normal, as if those 2 years of separation had never happened. As if Philip hadn't tried to turn his own parents into drug traffickers. When the allotted time was up and Philip had to return to the work program, Peter came back to me with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Dad said he's managing to save money at his new job, he said excitedly. He said that when he gets out completely, he's going to rent a small apartment, but with a room just for me. I forced a smile. That's great, Peter. He asked me if I want to live with him when he gets out. My heart sank. And what did you tell him? Peter looked at me, suddenly serious. I said that I like living with Grandma and Grandpa, that I don't want to change schools or leave my friends. I felt a guilty relief. On one hand, I was glad that Peter felt so comfortable with us that he didn't want to leave. On the other, I knew it would break Philip's heart. What did he say? He seemed sad, but then he said he understands, that maybe I can spend weekends with him, or holidays, that the important thing is that I'm happy and safe. Those words surprised me. The old Philip would have insisted, maybe even tried to make Peter feel guilty. This new Philip, who accepted his son's preference and prioritized his well-being over his own desires, was a significant change. That evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. Mom, it's Philip, from the work program. Thanks for bringing Peter today. I know it's not easy for you to see me coming back into his life, but I promise I'll do everything different this time. P.S. Peter is an incredible kid. You've done a much better job than I ever did. I showed the message to Anthony, who read it in silence. What do you think? I asked. Anthony sighed deeply. I think, maybe, he really is changing. The following months created a new routine. Peter continued to live with us, go to school, and play on the soccer team. On Saturdays, he would spend a few hours with Philip, sometimes at the park, sometimes at a snack bar, occasionally at school events where Philip could attend with special permission. On Sundays, we alternated between days at home and visits to Renee in prison. It was a delicate balance, but somehow it was working. Peter seemed happy with the arrangement, having the stability of our home and the gradual reconnection with his father. Philip, for his part, seemed to be taking his promise of change seriously. He worked consistently at the work program, continued his studies, and most importantly, never asked us for money. One Sunday morning, while Peter was still sleeping, Anthony and I were having coffee on the porch, enjoying the cool morning air. Have you thought about what will happen when Philip is fully released? Anthony asked, breaking our comfortable silence. The question had been hanging over us for months, but we always avoided addressing it directly. I think about it every day, I confessed. It's only 4 months away now. And what do you think will happen? I sighed deeply. Honestly, I don't know. Peter has made it clear that he wants to continue living with us, at least for now, but legally, Philip is the father. If he wants full custody, do you think he would do that? Force Peter to go against his will? I shook my head slowly. The old Philip? Definitely. This new Philip? I'm not sure. Our thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of the phone. It was Sunday morning. Who could be calling so early? Hello? I answered, a slight premonition bothering me. Mrs. Margaret? It was a male voice I didn't immediately recognize. This is Marshall, the supervisor at the work program where your son works. My heart sped up. Did something happen to Philip? He asked me to call. There was an incident last night. He's at the municipal hospital. Hospital? I exclaimed, causing Anthony to turn sharply towards me. What happened? Is he okay? He was attacked on his way back to the prison housing. Apparently, some old associates weren't happy with his refusal to go back to working with them after his release. Oh my God, I whispered. Is it serious? Some broken ribs, a deep cut on his arm, a concussion. But he's going to survive. He's asking to see you and Peter. The prison administration has authorized the hospital visit. I hung up the phone and quickly explained the situation to Anthony. We decided not to tell Peter all the details, only that his father had been hurt and was in the hospital. The public hospital was crowded that Sunday. We followed the crowded hallway until we reached Philip's bed. The sight of him shocked me. His face was swollen and bruised, one eye completely swollen shut, his arm bandaged and in a sling. Mom, he murmured when he saw me, his voice hoarse. You came. Of course I came, son. Peter ran to the side of the bed, his eyes wide with concern. Dad, what happened? Did you fall? Philip tried to smile, but the bruise on his face turned the expression into a grimace. Something like that, champ. But don't worry, your dad is tough. I'll be fine soon. After Peter was taken by Anthony to buy something in the cafeteria, Philip held my hand. It was the people from my past, he said quietly. The ones I owed money to. The same ones who put us in that situation with the bag. They came after you after all this time? Philip nodded slightly. They've been pressuring me for weeks. They wanted me to go back to work for them when I got out. Distribution, they call it. Drug trafficking is the real name. And you refused. I refused, he confirmed, a slight pride in his voice, despite the pain. I told them I was out of that life, that I had a son to raise, a clean future to build. I looked at my son, lying in that hospital bed, hurt for having made the right choice for the first time in so long. I felt a pride I hadn't felt in years. They said they'll be back, Philip continued, his voice now a tense whisper, that they'll come after me, and if necessary, after Peter. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. After Peter? Mom, Philip squeezed my hand, his eyes intense despite his injuries. I can't stay here. I can't put you or Peter at risk. When I'm released, I need to leave, far away, where they can't find me. But what about Peter? Your plans to rent an apartment, to have a room for him? That's why I'm talking to you now, he replied, his voice choked with emotion. Peter is happy and safe with you. He has school, friends, stability. To tear him away from all that for a life on the run from drug dealers. He shook his head. What kind of father would I be? What are you saying, Philip? I'm saying that when I get out, I'm going to leave. Alone, I'm going to another state. To start over where no one knows me. And I want you and Dad to continue with custody of Peter. The statement took me completely by surprise. It was the opposite of what I had feared. Instead of fighting for custody, Philip was voluntarily giving up his son to keep him safe. Are you sure about that? He's your son. And because he's my son, I need to do what's best for him, not what's easiest for me. He swallowed hard, visibly emotional. It's what you did on that highway, Mom, when you found the drugs in the bag. You did what was necessary, not what was easy. Now it's my turn to do the same. When Anthony and Peter returned, we talked about trivial things. The soccer team, school, the new video game Peter had asked for Christmas. But my mind was reeling from the earlier conversation. 2 days later, Philip was discharged and returned to the work release program, now with extra protection. In the following weeks, he began to prepare Peter for the idea that he would need to move when he was released. It's for work, son. I got an opportunity in Denver. It's a new chance, a new life. But what about me? Peter asked, his voice small. Can't I go with you? I saw Philip's heart break with that question, but he stood firm. Not right now, champ. You have school, friends, your whole life established here. It wouldn't be fair to tear you away from all that, but I'll visit whenever I can. And when I'm well established, who knows? We both knew it was an empty promise, but it was easier than the brutal truth. that Philip was leaving to protect his son from dangerous men who might use him to get to him. The day of Philip's release arrived on a rainy Tuesday in March. Anthony and I picked him up at the prison gate while Peter was at school. A decision made to ease the difficult farewell. "So this is it," Philip said, standing on the sidewalk with a simple backpack containing all his belongings. "Starting from scratch at 44. "You'll do fine," Anthony said, patting his shoulder. "You're still young, you have your health, you're studying. Many people start over with less than that." Philip nodded. "I know. I just wish I had realized this sooner, before wasting so many years. Before almost sacrificing both of you for my irresponsibility." We took Philip to our house for one last family meal before his departure. The bus ticket to Austin was bought for that night. A friend from the work program had arranged a job and a place for him to stay there. Peter came home from school and spent the last precious hours with his father. They played video games, talked about soccer, made impossible plans about what they would do when they saw each other again. It was painful to watch, knowing that it could be months, maybe years, before it was safe for Philip to return. When it was time to leave, Philip hugged Peter for a long time. "Be a good boy for your grandparents," he said, his voice choked. "Study, be honest, work hard, be better than your father." "I will, Dad, I promise." Peter was crying openly now. "But come back soon, okay?" "As soon as I can, champ, as soon as I can." Philip turned to me, his eyes red. "Mom, I didn't let him finish. I hugged my son with all the strength I had." "I know, Philip, I know." After the taxi took Philip to the bus station, I sat with Peter on the porch while he processed his father's departure. Anthony had gone to get ice cream, our tradition for difficult moments. "Grandma," Peter said finally, "Dad's not coming back soon, is he?" I looked at my grandson, now almost 13, more perceptive than we gave him credit for. "Maybe not, sweetie. He needs a new beginning, far from the bad influences of the past." Peter nodded slowly. "It's because of those men who hurt him, isn't it? I heard you guys talking in the hospital when you thought I was sleeping." I took a deep breath, surprised. "Yes, Peter, your father is leaving to keep you safe." Instead of getting angry at the truth, Peter seemed to accept it with surprising maturity. "So, he's protecting us. Like a hero." "Yes," I replied, feeling tears in my eyes. "Exactly like a hero." 3 months later, Renee was also released to a work release program. Unlike Philip, she had no prior involvement with drug trafficking and was able to stay in the city. She started working in a textile factory and renting a small room. Peter visited her regularly, and she, contrary to everything I might have expected, always respected our role as his primary guardians. "I know Peter is better off with you," she told me once, as we waited for Peter to finish a soccer game. "You gave him the stability that Philip and I could never offer." A year passed. Philip called Peter regularly. He sent occasional gifts on special occasions, but he never returned to visit. Through video calls, we saw that he seemed to be thriving. He had gained weight. His face had color again. His eyes shone with a serenity he had never had before. On one of those calls, he asked to speak with me alone. "How are you, son?" I asked when Peter left the room. "Good, Mom, really good. Steady job, small but decent apartment. I'm even dating someone." "That's wonderful, son. And, is it safe now?" He sighed. "Not yet. Last week I heard they're still asking about me around there. It's better to stay away for now." I nodded, understanding the pain behind that ongoing decision. "Mom," he continued, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For saying no that day. For pulling over the car. For calling the police." He smiled sadly. "It seems crazy to thank you for that, but if you had kept driving, if you had been caught with those drugs, not only would you be in prison, but I would have never changed. I would have continued in that life, making terrible decisions, until I ended up dead or in prison for something much worse." I felt the tears run down my face. I only did what any mother would do to protect her family. "No, Mom, you did what a wise mother would do. A mother who knows that loving isn't giving everything, it's not always saying yes. Sometimes, the deepest love is saying no. It's setting boundaries. It's letting a person face the consequences of their own mistakes." Those words stayed with me in the following years. As Peter grew up, as Anthony and I grew older, as our family, broken and mended, found its new normal. Peter is 17 now. Next year he'll go to college, the first person in our family to do so. Philip is still in Denver. He built a new life. And although the distance remains, the bond with his son was never completely broken. Renee, surprisingly, became a constant and positive presence, having learned to respect boundaries she once seemed incapable of recognizing. As for me, at 72 years old, I look back on that afternoon on the highway, the moment I screamed at Anthony to turn the car around, and I know it was the hardest and most important decision of my life. It was the moment I realized that loving doesn't mean allowing everything, that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, and that sometimes saying no is the greatest gift we can give someone. When I opened that bag and saw what my son had hidden there, my world fell apart. But from the ruins of that day, we built something new. An imperfect family, scarred, but stronger and more honest than we ever were before. As Peter recently said in a school paper about his family, sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what really matters. My father learned that the hard way, but thanks to my grandmother's courage, we all learned too. Now, if you liked this story, click on this next video that's appearing on the screen, because in it, there's a story of betrayal and upheaval like you've never seen before.